Hello, hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to What's the Plan? Let us know where you're coming in from. We're going to welcome everybody into this community of pro-democracy Americans who are out there fighting the fascist forces in our federal government and fighting to push the Democrats to really take them on and unify and fighting for each other and our democracy. Great to see everybody. You're starting to flood in. We got Angie, very excited to be first Arizona in the house. Love to see it. Bellevue, Washington. Mark from Kirkland, Washington as well. We've got Joplin in the house. We've got Geneva, New York, Littleton, Colorado. Leah, call out some. What are you seeing?
I see. Let's see. Chicago. Oh, Indivisible Citizens of Catawba Valley, Western North Carolina, Windham, Vermont, Bend, Oregon, Boise, Idaho, Rockaway, New Jersey, Northeast Maryland. You gotta keep scrolling.
Oh, sorry.
Eugene,
Yeah, it just
Oregon,
goes too fast. Okay.
Decatur, Georgia, Harrison, Ohio,
Got
West
Barb
Virginia,
in Lawrence, Kansas. Great to see you, Barb. Joanna in
Florida,
Venice, Florida.
Sonoma, Savannah,
Hey, Francis.
Conshohocken, Pennsylvania. That's a cool name. Let's see, Moore,
Deborah
Venice,
from
Dallas,
Dallas, Anand in Somerville. Hey, Somerville. You've lived in
Delaware,
Somerville.
Ohio, Reedsboro, Vermont, Reston, Virginia. Shout out to the Virginia, New Jersey folks who are gearing up for the election season. Let's see, New Rochelle, Indivisible, Guilford, Vermont.
People are flooding in. We've been saying this every week because it continues to be the case. There are more people registered for this one than ever before, and people keep on joining, which is exactly what we need in this moment, y'all. Leah, should we get into everything that we need to cover today?
Let's start. Yeah, let's
Okay. Well, everybody, I'm Ezra.
I'm Leah.
Leah, who are we?
We are the co-founders of Indivisible.
And it is great to be here with y'all. As I mentioned at the outset, the point of these meetings is we want to have discussion with the movement. And because we are a pro-democracy movement, because we're trying to organize mass peaceful opposition to a unified authoritarian regime, the only way to do that is out in public. The only way to do that is actually do it. We are not the leaders of this movement. The leaders of No Kings, the leaders of Indivisible, the leaders of the organizing that is meaningful, that is happening right now, it's all y'all. It's folks around the country who are leading their Indivisible groups, or leading their 5051 groups, or leading their Working Families Party work. You found an organizing home. You're part of either a geographic community or a digital community. And we got to get bigger. We got to get more sophisticated. We got to mature in our tactics and our strategies. But the best way we do that is together. So the point of these weekly calls is for us to do that together. That's the goal. Um, okay, so Leah, do you want to talk about these calls specifically for brand newbies who are joining?
Yes, if you are just joining us, this is What's the Plan. We talk about strategy. We talk about what is happening in the world. We take your questions. This is going to be mostly Q&A. We'll do a little monologue up front about some of the stuff that's popping this week, but overwhelmingly it's Q&A. So if you have a question, put it in the Q&A box on your toolbar. If you click on that, you can also upvote questions with the little thumbs up icon to get the ones that you want to see. We're going to take them mostly off the top with a little bit of attention to making sure we got a healthy balance of questions on different topics. If you are with an Indivisible group, please be sure to indicate that in your question. We like to make sure that we are answering questions from people who are directly involved in the work all over the place. This is going to be recorded. The recording will be sent out to everyone who has registered in the follow-up email, along with all of the links that we put in the chat over time, resources, articles, calls to action, etc. Finally, a note on the chat box. It goes really fast. It is full of great ideas and cool exchanges and awesome stuff. We ask that people keep that chat box respectful and constructive. We are not always going to agree on strategies. We are not always going to be in exactly the same place in any moment. That is why it is really important that we root ourselves in the fact that we are all in this together and lift each other up.
That's right. Leah, do you want to show off your mug? I just was realizing I have the Maryland Renaissance Festival mug full of iced coffee, and Leah has whale sharks. Huge whale shark fan. Okay, y'all, let's get into this. Let's talk about what we're doing together. And as people know, we like to kick these off with welcoming the new people who are joining the movement. Our unit of activism, as we say all the time, it's the group. In a representative democracy, we as individuals, unless you're super rich or super famous, you don't have very much power. The power of one is very little. The power of many combined and organized into peaceful, insistent pro-democracy force, that's giant, y'all. That's how we put on the largest peaceful protest in American history, as we did a couple of weeks ago together. This is how we're building the kind of pro-democracy force necessary to significantly and effectively and impactfully counteract what this regime is doing. So I say that all to say, let's welcome the newbies. Let's roll the red carpet out for them. Let me see it in the chat. Let me see it in the in your emojis. We're going to welcome 10 new Indivisible groups that formed just in the last week. These are not all of the Indivisible groups. These are just some folks who joined, and there are many others. Ginny with Tracy Resistance and Action Coalition in Tracy, California. We've got Tina in Trinidad, California, with Trinidad, California Indivisible. Maxine with Park City Indivisible in Bridgeport, Connecticut. Vicky in Puller Indivisible in Puller, Georgia. We've got Willadine in Indivisible Vermilion County, Indiana. That's in Clinton, Indiana. Bradley with Vernon Parish Indivisible in Leesville, Louisiana. Alexandra with Milan. Is it Milan or Milan? Milan? Indivisible. This isn't in Milan, although we do have a Milan Indivisible too in Italy. But this is Milan, Michigan. We've got Paula with Washtenaw Indivisible in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Joe with Swain Indivisible in Whittier, North Carolina. And finally, last but not least, Susan with Indivisible Greater Falls in Rockingham, Vermont. We got two in Vermont this this week too. Okay. Great to have you all. This movement is built by people who raised their hand and said, I guess I'm going to organize. And this is what we need because we all know that the authoritarians, what do they depend on, y'all? They depend on making us feel like we are alone and powerless. That's how they succeed. They want us to feel alone. There is no more defiant act you can do in October of 2025 than saying, screw that. I'm finding my community and we're going to meet up at the local library and talk about what we can do. That is how we win. Everything flows from that. So if you're listening to this and you're like, well, I don't have a local organizing hub or I don't know who my Indivisible group is, find it. It is out there. There are about 2,700 Indivisible groups out there. Your community is out there. And if you don't see it on the map, go to indivisible.org. If you don't see it on the map, go and start your own. Get a friend together. It doesn't take more than two. Get a friend together and get out there. You're going to find other community members who want to be part of it. Okay. Movement growth we've talked about. Leah, we have two things to cover broadly. You're going to cover the first one. I'll cover the second one. You're going to cover shutdown, SNAP, and mutual aid. I'm going to cover Spotify.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now we're going to talk about the state of play overall and the shutdown quite a bit on this call, but I want to talk about something that I know a lot of people are really grappling with and how we're orienting around it, which is that November 1st is the cutoff for SNAP benefits, not because this is a natural product of the shutdown, but because there is money that is put aside that is supposed to be used in this event to ensure that SNAP benefits are continued, that Trump is refusing to use. So this is not only a product just of the shutdown, it is a product of a deliberate decision by Republicans to inflict harm on people in order to avoid negotiating to help protect people's health care. Okay, so what are we going to do about that? We're going to model that when we are failed by Trump, when we are failed by MAGA Republicans, by their chaos, by their cruelty, by their inability to govern, we help to protect each other, right? Because they are refusing to protect this critical healthcare and nutrition programs. We are going to mobilize to keep folks fed and protected. So this is the first action of the No Kings Alliance, which coming out of No Kings is going to be launching regular weekly CTAs on things that you can do around the country to take action, to continue and keep going, keep the energy going from No Kings, from rural communities to city blocks. We are going to see folks push together to take care of our communities. We've got 3 different ways you can plug into that. The first is very simple. Just donate to your local food bank. Make sure that they are getting a financial gift or a resource gift. But I think most food banks would tell you that giving money is the first and easiest thing. Second, collect and distribute to your local community shelter. Donate food, clothing, menstrual products, other essential supplies to existing local food banks or shelters. Check with local organizations before you do that to see what they need. And then host a give back drive in your own community. If you're an organized group, we've got an entire guide for you on how you can do a food and supply drive. But this kind of actual community care, we think is going to be really important to make the jump for people from, a one-day protest to what we actually really do, which is we show up for our communities. Ezra, over to you.
Well, and I would just say this is something that I would recommend every Indivisible group do. If you're on the No Kings Alliance list, what you will see is this is the major action from the No Kings Alliance. I would also recommend if you've got a Democratic rep or a Democratic senator, you tell them, be part of this. If I could wave a
Mhm.
wand, I would have every single Democratic elected official, I would have every single local Democratic Party being out there
Yeah.
doing mutual aid all over the next week. I think that's what a healthy political party would do to demonstrate we're not just pointing fingers. This isn't just political games. This is us coming together in service of the community as well.
That's right.
But we're also not going to give in to the demands of the Republicans to skyrocket your health insurance just
Yeah.
to try to get past this problem. So I'm really excited for this ask. I think it's something tangible we can do to help build community in major ways. So great, love it. We'll be moving forward with it. Leah and I will be also personally doing this weekend with the kids. Um, okay, update on Spotify boycott. We talked about this last week. A reminder about how we came to this very briefly. This is not a normal administration. This is not Reagan. This is not George W. Bush. This is not George H.W. Bush. Yes, they are cutting taxes for billionaires and they're cutting healthcare for the rest of us. In that way, it's standard. But the hallmark of an authoritarian regime is their attack on other sources of power, on media, on businesses, on universities. That is what we are seeing now. They are bullying anybody who can be bullied. So why do we engage in economic power rather than just legislative advocacy? Because this is how we build a culture of defiance. This is how we build a culture of defiance. And I really want to, I'm going to say again, we're learning from Disney example, right? What did we see with Disney and ABC and Kimmel a few weeks ago? The regime bullied, the institution Disney capitulated, the people rebelled in mass, the institution reversed its course. Kimmel is back on the air and democracy is a little stronger. That's good for Disney, but it's good beyond Disney. It means other institutions see that and say, oh no, I don't want to be one of those guys. I might have to change. This is why we were interested in Spotify. It looked like it might be a good target. Disney has a multi-billion dollar corporation that depends on subscriptions. So does Spotify. 90% of its revenue depends on subscriptions. And we know that a lot of Spotify listeners don't like the fact that just now Spotify is running ads recruiting for ICE, the secret police force that answers to Donald Trump, that is zip tying children, that is dragging them out of apartment buildings, that is violating the law and the Constitution. Spotify is recruiting for ICE right now. This isn't a major part of their business model. It's relatively small, but it is sticking their thumb in the eye of everybody who opposes authoritarianism in this country. So we sent out a survey to all y'all. We had not started any campaign. We wanted to judge where you were. And I'm just going to give it to y'all straight. About half of y'all are Spotify users, the folks who responded. We had a ton of responses. About 30% of y'all are doing that with a subscription, and then the rest are doing it without a subscription, but you still use it. And then we asked, well, would you be willing to cancel? Would you be willing to stop using it? We got 85% of the folks within Indivisible. They said, hell yeah, I'll cancel. 11% said maybe or unsure. So that's up to about 96%. Only 4% said no. That was a pretty clear sign for us, Leah. I felt pretty good about those results. Now, in that survey, we also asked, what concerns do you have? And the point here is to try to understand uh, what do we need to address? What do we need to do to make this as successful as possible? And we're going to go through a few of those concerns just because we're having a discussion about this. This is a new tactic. We're trying to lead together through this to make it as impactful as possible. Leah, I want to toss the first question to you to cover, which is one central strategic question that came from y'all in the survey was, why Spotify and not others? What's that like? Is it the worst actor? Is it suddenly going to solve everything if we get Spotify? Why are we focusing on Spotify? Leah, do you want to talk about the strategic logic here?
Sure. So, one thing that I wanna emphasize, like we're navigating a moment when most major corporations have in some way folded, capitulated, done something that the administration wants them to do that we do not want them to do. That is like a very hard
Yeah,
fundamental reality. And it creates some weird choice points around what kind of corporate pressure where when frankly you have a lot of pretty problematic actors. And so the analysis here is not Spotify is the single worst actor. It is we actually have to start creating a cadence of regularly responding to acts of corporate capitulation from consumer facing brands
yeah.
such that every consumer facing brand, whether it's like a big or a small action that they're taking, has to factor in the possibility that there might be an outsized consumer reaction to what they're doing. And so it's not necessarily like, oh, is Spotify the worst of the worst, right? It is Spotify has made a decision that was totally optional to accept money in order to run ads for a recruitment for a secret police force. And we want the next actor that's considering doing something similar to that to think, oh, I don't, one factor in my mind is that I might get a bunch of consumers coming back who are really pushing back on this. And I
Yep.
actually have to think about that up front. And so that's the logic of it. It's not, the most, like, it's not that they're the single biggest contributor to Trump, but it is that we want everyone in a similar position to Spotify in the future to think maybe this will happen if I do X action.
Yeah, thank you for that, Leah. Hopefully that explains the logic of this, of why we're trying to concentrate on one to send a message, similar to how we did it with Disney. A couple of other questions that I'll go through briefly, and then we have a helpful video that I think for how to cancel. But wait, did you have something else there?
Yeah, well, and then just to be clear, like in order to send a message that you gotta take the right actions, right? Like the reason why we're focusing on Spotify is to ask them to drop these ads.
Yes.
We're trying to get them to step away from running ads that are recruiting for secret police.
That was one of the other top questions, which is like, wait, what is the demand? And it is important when you're engaging in a campaign like this to have a demand that your target can meet, can actually do. You have to be able to be satisfied by the actions of the target. And in this case, Spotify does a lot of messy stuff, but one specifically bad thing that they do is that they are recruiting for ICE. They are taking money from DHS to recruit for ICE. That is a bad thing they can stop doing. Not every bad corporation is doing that, but Spotify is doing that. So we have a very clear demand. Stop running ads for ICE. Stop recruiting. You can stop that tomorrow. We will stop if you stop. So this is a clear demand. It's easy to carry through. We have a secondary demand around reviewing exactly what their policies are that would even allow for ICE recruitment ads to be placed. But the key demand here is just stop running these ads. Stop taking money from DHS. So I think it's important that that's clear, and also it's important that it's something they can do. They can communicate out that they do, and then we can reward for them having done it. Similar to after Disney reinstated Kimmel, a lot of people got back on Disney Plus. That's healthy. That's how it should work. You use both the carrot and the stick. That if they change their behavior, they will be rewarded by consumers. And if they don't change their behavior, they're going to see a lot more of their users upset. A couple more questions. One was that the question y'all had was, okay, if I don't use Spotify, which is roughly half of y'all, what do I do? I think this is actually a really good push for us because the way the campaign was constructed was cancel Spotify. But for those of you who don't use Spotify, I do think it's important we have a way for you to contribute to this work. My current suggestion would be you can be part of the chorus of support for canceling Spotify and working within your own local organizing group, whether that's Indivisible or another, to make this a thing. Make this something that everybody sees. So the half of you who are using it hear from the half of you who aren't using it. So we are asking you to recruit. Ask your family, ask your friends, ask your Indivisible group, ask your local 5051 chapter, whatever it is. Do you use Spotify? Great. We're joining this campaign and be part of it. Did you have something there?
No, I just want to make sure we get to questions for you.
Okay. Oh yeah, we're running out of time. The last thing I'll say is switching costs are real and not theoretical. A lot of people brought this up. Spotify owns a lot of your music or your kids' music. Some people who are teaching classes and use Spotify every day, or they have like your mental health soundtrack is Spotify. I hear that. I get that too. I transferred all my songs and I had something like, I don't know, 1,500 songs that are just like core to my existence. I listen to it every day. I think one of the parts of switching Spotify is not losing all that. And there are services out there that'll help you transfer to a Tidal or an Apple Music or a different platform that isn't currently running ICE ads. So know that you don't have to leave this behind. It's a little bit of work. You've got to sign up for an app and then transfer them over, but you can do it. And so we're working on resources to help show you here is exactly how you get it done. We want to go on to a video on how to cancel just to walk everybody through it. Then we'll just distribute it out to y'all. So let me show this and then we'll get to questions shortly after. Lori, you want to?
So here's how you cancel your Spotify subscription. It's important to know that you can't actually cancel the account on the app. So what you're going to do is you're going to look up Spotify and go to the web version. Once you're there, you're going to go to that top right corner and find your icon at the top right of the screen. Click on it, and then you're going to go to account. in the drop down bar. And then once there, you're going to scroll down to cancel subscription and click on that. You're going to scroll down to that button that says yes, cancel. There will be an option to write out exactly why you're canceling your Spotify subscription. So make it clear that you are canceling your subscription until Spotify terminates all ads promoting ICE. And then you're just going to want to click that green submit button, and then you've canceled your subscription and sent a message to Spotify.
No streams for the regime. I love that. Easy peasy, y'all. Couldn't be easier. We'll send that out. It's easy. You can get it out to your groups, get it out to other folks, post it to your social media, recruit. Just a quick update. We said we were reaching out to the Spotify execs last week. We did reach out. They did not respond. So we launched the campaign a couple of days ago. Thousands have already canceled their subscriptions. And we're not dropping this. We're not getting distracted. We're not moving on. Next steps, we're going to get more partners on board. Shout out to WFP, specifically Nalini Stamp, an incredible organizer who was out there before we were, both on this and on Disney. There are a lot of other folks who are looking to join the campaign. We want everybody on board, and the more the merrier. Second, we're planning a day of action around this, so stay tuned, but there will be an Indivisible-wide day of action specifically to put pressure and concentrate that on one day. And third, Spotify doesn't have a ton of actual brick and mortar locations in the US, but they do have some in places like New York and Nashville and LA. So again, something that we're planning in the not too distant future are a set of peaceful but insistent protests outside of Spotify headquarters and offices. So more to come, and we will continue to give updates on this. And as we have news, we will share them with you. Okay, all that said, Leah, we took up 23 minutes of our hour with all this. Should we move on to Q
Yeah,
and
let's do
A?
it. Let's do it.
Okay, Q&A time, y'all. A reminder, put your questions in the chat, vote on them. Let us know if you're within an Indivisible group. We'll call you out, shine some light on you. Leah, first question is from Amy. Can Johnson legally, indefinitely delay swearing in Representative-elect Adelita Grijalva? This raises serious concerns about Democrats being seated fairly before and after the 2026 elections. What can be done? We know why he's doing this. Release the Epstein files. Indeed.
Yeah. I actually, so just to say, I know there is a lawsuit in progress from the Arizona Attorney General on this specific topic. Grijalva has now been like the longest, we are way past all of the records for the longest
Yep.
time between being elected and being seated. Mike Johnson has been making up increasingly ridiculous explanations for why they're not doing it, and they're all getting batted down, and he doesn't care because he's just an open out and out liar.
Yep.
Over and above the legal implications here, I would say there are two really important points. One is, yes, you are totally right. This is a demonstration of the fact that we are in pretty uncharted territory as it relates to future seats and the 2026 election. We've talked about this in a variety of ways. We have every reason to believe that they are going to try, they have already started to rig, and they are going to continue to try to rig the 2026 election on the front end and on the back end. This is for a simple reason. Donald Trump knows that he is going to lose big. He does not want to be impeached. He is going to try and do everything he can to shape the electorate, to shape the congressional districts, and then to mess with voting in order to guarantee his proposed outcome. And part of why it is so important that we organize big mass mobilizations like No Kings, but also get as strong locally as we possibly can, is because we know as they start to pull these increasingly dangerous shenanigans around the 2026 election that we have got to be prepared as well. So that's totally true. The other thing that I will say on your question specifically is I think there's actually a little bit of an answer within your question, which is we should be highlighting over and over again that why they are doing this. They have basically chosen to keep the House on its longest ever vacation and delay seating Adelita Grijalva in order to avoid a situation in which they have a vote on releasing the Epstein files. That is why. It is because they are terrified. They have simply stopped an entire chamber of government because they are terrified of the outcome of this vote.
It's wild.
It's wild.
I mean,
it's wild.
I don't know what more to say about it. She is going to be seated eventually. We are going to get the discharge petition. She'll be number 218, which is enough to get it out. So we're going to get a vote on it. But it is really wild.
Yeah.
I do think also Mike Johnson is able to continue his aw shucks. I'm just a I'm just a country boy routine, and that has worked for a while. I think it's wearing pretty thin. I don't know if folks saw the Daily Show supercut of him saying, "Oh, I haven't seen that. I haven't heard about that." But it is one of his go-to lines that he just acts like he hasn't seen it and then is able to move on. I think the more pressure we can put on him for this, the better.
That's right.
Next question is from Robert from CBFD, Indivisible in San Diego. Hey, Robert. Noting that y'all are on the front lines of this ICE Border Patrol fight as well because you are on the border. I'm just summarizing a bit. But you're reporting that last week some of your congressional reps tried to perform inspections but were turned away for stupid excuses. That's somewhat standard operating procedure now. We're seeing that in a lot of places. You're noting that many volunteers have been monitoring detention processes and holding vigils and rallies, which we've participated in as well. I think that's good to draw attention to it. And the question here is, any ideas for how we can enable congressional oversight and more generally push back on this fascism? I have a couple ideas, Leah, but you want to? So we've talked about this a few times. I think it's that there's an unhealthy and I think unhelpful element of Democratic consultant land that says immigration is a loser issue for Democrats and we shouldn't talk about it. And this includes ICE, this includes Border Patrol, this includes in general responding to border issues or immigration issues. And it leads some Democrats to shy away from engaging at all. I want to call out Chris Van Hollen on the other side as somebody who was part of circles that would call for that in the Democratic ecosystem and said, screw that, I'm going down to El Salvador because Abrego Garcia, my constituent, has been disappeared there, and I'm going to get answers. And what we saw is that when Dems take on this issue, even among people who might disagree with the Democratic Party generally, or even specifically on immigration, we win. We actually move people to our side, but we've got to take it on directly. So kudos to your congressional reps who are actually going out on this. But what we need to do is make very clear right now that when Dems take the House in 2027 on January 3rd, that the first act of that new Democratic House is going to be having subpoenas fly out all over the country and to anybody who violated the Constitution or broke the law. And this is important so that it happens in 2027, but it's also important for right now. It's important to send the message to these ICE facilities, to their leadership, that this period that we're in is temporary. And if they think they're going to get away with breaking the law and violating the Constitution, they got another thing coming. That we are going to make this a priority. We're not doing Merrick Garland again. We're not going to forgive and forget. There will be accountability and people will face accountability for the crimes that they are committing. But this needs to be top of the list. They need to be saying this out loud. They need to be naming names of the people who are leading these facilities. And I would say they need to be pushing forward at the state level, given that y'all are in California, legislation to demask ICE and prevent as much as we can some of the damage they're doing to our communities. Leah, do you have other ideas for people with ICE facilities in their district or in their community, and they're trying to figure out how to get accountability?
No, but this is a good moment to shout out that there are actions at Home Depot facility or Home Depot stores all over the country happening on November 1st, Dia de los Muertos. And that they're being bottom lined by Endelon, the National Daily Laborers Network. And so those are also another opportunity to raise the overall awareness in your community about what is happening and also push Home Depot particularly on, oh my God, I'm so
You are so
I look
bad,
like
yeah.
I'm gonna burst into
Here, you
tears
back up
any
and
moment.
then
Okay.
great.
There to raise awareness in your own community about the attacks on workers and the ways in which Home Depot is complicit.
Yeah. Good question though, and unfortunately, this is going to get worse before it gets better. We see this right now. There was something of a big shakeup at ICE where some of the worst actors in the mass deportation space are being put in charge of ICE, and we all know that the funding from the big ugly bill is now starting to flow down. The reason why Spotify is getting money to recruit ICE agents is because of the big ugly bill, which is passing billions of dollars into ICE, which gives them money to buy Spotify ads. There are going to be a lot more ICE agents. They're going to be not qualified. They're going to be ideologically aligned with the regime, and they're going to be doing a lot of damage. So I don't think this is just a San Diego issue. And if it's not an issue in your community yet, it's probably going to become more of an issue soon. So I do think this is top of mind. Mary asks regarding Spotify subscriptions cancellations. I understand that Pandora, HBO Max, and Hulu are also participating in this. Is there a plan to get these services to stop running these ads too? This is a great question, Mary, because you're highlighting this key strategic question of like, why one service when in fact there are a lot of bad actors? You are absolutely right. Pandora is a bad actor here. They're running ICE ads. HBO is a bad actor. They're running ICE ads. Hulu is a bad actor. They're running ICE ads. Why not all of them, or how will we get all of them? Leah, this is adjacent to your answer earlier. Do you want to speak to this?
I mean, I think the basic answer here is you want to start with some folks where you think they've got a model where they might be amenable, and you want to get some wins, right?
Yeah.
I think, for example, we talk about this in the context of other ongoing corporate actions, right? With Target, for example, Target was a very early example of anticipatory obedience, and we're super supportive of the ongoing Target boycott there, where people are saying, until you actually walk back the ways in which you preemptively obeyed the administration, we're actually not going to shop here. So these are examples of taking a specific brand that is, public facing, consumer facing, and actually saying, we really want to push you on a specific action. And if we can get some wins, then that actually starts to factor into other companies' decision making going forward.
I mean, here's what I would say. Let's win on Spotify, and then let's go to the next one. Like, if they don't also drop, if they don't also get the message, let's go to the next one. I would also welcome if any of the executives from Pandora or HBO or Hulu are on right now, and you want to announce, hey, we thought about this and we decided to drop. Great, we'll celebrate you. And if you don't, maybe we'll be coming for you later. Meg asks, is Indivisible part of the mass blackout, hashtag read out, happening November 25th to December 2nd? We are actually in active conversations. Leah, what can we share about this?
Listen, so there are a bunch of different kind of viral organic efforts that are starting to happen around Black Friday, around Cyber Monday, all the days in between, and the holiday season. And I've seen several of them, and I'm actually not sure which, there's mass blackout, there's a Black Friday effort, there's a bunch of them. We are going to have something for you on this relatively soon. We haven't formally signed on to any of the things that are currently circulating, but we recognize this is a really important narrative moment around corporations that are enabling oppression and enabling autocracy in our country. And so we hear you, and give us a minute.
Yeah. Cheryl asked, this is a scary thing for folks. Rachel Maddow is doing a great job covering the decline into authoritarianism that we're all witnessing, and she's doing it unflinchingly. She reported back this past Monday that ICE is getting access to Pegasus, which is this scary tool that basically allows the government to tap into your phone and see anything that is going on without you even knowing. So Cheryl's question is, should we either not bring our phones or get our burner phone? This is scary. What do we say?
I would say a couple things. I think the first is, as always, you set your own mileage as it relates to your personal risk factors, right? If you are undocumented, if you are a person of, a trans or non-binary person, if you have any reason to believe that you are going to be at higher risk from state repression, you set your own safety parameters there. But I also want to say that what we are collectively doing, our strategy is to organize out in the open, unafraid, and very cheerfully and peacefully and joyfully exercise our First Amendment rights when we have a protest, when we have a rally, when we have an action. Because what we are doing is not only legal and lawful and fully protected by the First Amendment, it is the most American thing you can possibly do. And so I've seen a number of recommendations around leave your phone, have a burner phone, etc. I will say that I take my phone. I mean, obviously I take my phone. I'm on the speakers list, so you're going to be able to figure out that I'm at the rally. But I take my phone when I'm doing things, because fundamentally, if someone wants to come after me for exercising my First Amendment rights, then I'm going to stand there and defend my ground and say I'm exercising my First Amendment rights, and that's part of how we push back against authoritarianism.
Badass, Leah. Okay. Haru asked from Indivisible, Sacramento. I'm going to summarize because it's a bit of a long question, but you're noting that organizing something as big as No Kings, especially in the big metropolitan areas, takes a lot of work, and in fact is very difficult if you can't get insurance. So we heard this from some organizers that you either couldn't get insurance, or because the date wasn't announced far enough in advance, somebody else had permits for the area where you would be holding the No Kings protest. And so what you're asking for here is as much of a heads up as possible so that you can plan know that we are in active discussions with the No Kings Coalition now about how we plan the next action. I can't yet announce it's going to be this date, but message heard loud and clear that as much of a heads up as possible so that you can prepare everything is what you're looking for here. I think we've done better with each national mobilization so far this year. I think for Hands Off, we had something like 2 weeks. And for No Kings 1, we had something like a
3
month.
weeks.
Yeah, less than a month. And for No Kings 2, we had 6 weeks or so, if memory serves. So we were trying to get better at this. I I think I can commit that you'll have more of a heads up than you got for No Kings 2. That you will know further in advance. So we're trying to do better on that. I will say I feel you on the insurance problem. There is something very clearly going on in insurance land where there is an obey in advance culture happening where insurance companies are simply refusing to cover peaceful protesters. And we're hearing this across the country. It's real. It's a problem. It makes it more complicated for us to put on big national mobilizations, even though when we do them, they are peaceful. They are basically without incident. So this isn't about us actually causing damage of any kind. This is insurance companies being fearful that the regime is going to crack down on them for covering peaceful protests against the regime. It's gnarly stuff, and it's a sign of just how bad things are getting.
Yeah.
Okay, Nina asks. Whoa, and now I'm being listened.
Oh, well, that's not good.
My watch is listening to us. Speaking of ice, Nina asks, please ensure that any holiday boycott message encourages people to shop small, local, and handmade. Tell them to seek out local craft
Yep.
fairs and stores and features local artists. I'm a handmade vendor, and I seriously worry about calls to buy nothing. I'm with you. So we've had a lot of conversations actually specifically about this, Nina, that the goal isn't to get people to just totally cut things out. We want to direct them to good sources, preferably local sources that are actually in their community with real human beings behind them. So heard loud and clear, that is the direction Indivisible will be going as we're trying to navigate this space.
Yep,
Anything else?
totally aligned, totally agree.
Yeah. Okay, Stephen asks, I believe that the single most important political action of the coming week is November 4th, Election Day. I have been informally calling that the next No Kings protest. That is, there are elections in California, there are elections in Virginia and New Jersey and in Maine and in Pennsylvania. There are a lot of elections literally 5 days from now, and we got to wipe the floor with the authoritarians in those elections. After the elections, is there anything we can do to draw even more focus to the fight for the Affordable Care Act? Is the follow-up question. People are starting to receive their 2026 healthcare plans, and this could be an important moment to catch people as they start to wake up to what Republicans have done to their premiums, particularly in rural and Rust Belt areas, but the same is true everywhere. And I would just note on the rural and Rust Belt areas, one of the things that we're seeing now is the closures of rural hospitals. And this is partly a result of the ACA subsidies, but it's also a big result of the Medicaid cuts, which is, again, one of the demands that the Democrats have right now is to restore the Medicaid cuts. Leah, you want to talk about shutdown, healthcare? How do we focus in on the damage that the Republicans are doing right now?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you've been participating in the Healthcare Heist Week of Action, which we can link in the chat, there's ongoing efforts to put pressure on Congress on this front, right? So just continuing to make sure that they hear a steady drumbeat of people who are making clear this is an emergency. I'd also think about community messaging and education, right? This is the week the exchanges are open. This is the week when a lot of people are gonna see premium increases that are out of control.
Yeah.
And anecdotally speaking, we're hearing that from people who are on the exchanges, but also from people who just have non-exchange related healthcare because the insurance companies are functionally assuming that there's going to be kind of a death spiral and they're pricing that in for all of us. So it's wildly out of control. And it is a collective emergency, not just for the people who are on the exchanges.
So specifically on this, what I would recommend is use your voice with your elected reps and senators now. So the election, I agree. I think the election is the best one day.
Just to note, the healthcare on the line call is tonight. So there
Yes.
are going to be a bunch of actions that you can take specifically on this that will be outlined for you on that call. Please join.
We'll put a link into the
Yeah.
healthcare on.
It's
Oh,
already
great.
there.
Oh, thank you, Lori, for putting the link in. Look, y'all, this is a live fight. And the scuttlebutt we have on the inside of Congress is that Democrats are getting nervous about holding the line. I think we will make it through the election. And also, the Democrats don't want a lot of human damage. They don't want people to lose their SNAP benefits. They don't want the government to be shut down. And the Republicans basically don't care about that stuff. So the only thing that's actually going to fracture the Republican coalition on this is that they sense that the public in general is pissed off at them for skyrocketing their premiums, for closing their rural hospitals, and for cutting off their SNAP. So we need them to hear that. And so far, I would say this is broken through with the Indivisible community. We have driven tens of thousands of calls and messages to Congress. We are doing that, but it's not broken through to the broader ecosystem. Like it's not the page one story of the New York Times or the Washington Post or your local paper. It's possible as these premium notices go out, it will become more of a top level story once it becomes not just a hypothetical or political fight, but a real fight. But the thing to do now is to thank your Democratic senator and your representative, assuming they're not Cortez Masto or John Fetterman or Angus King. They're on the wrong side of this, but all the other Senate Democrats are on the right side. So you get to be in this great position of thanking a member of Congress for doing the right thing. Thank them, tell them to hold strong. If they cave, game over. The insurance premium increases, they're locked in, they're not going down. But if they hold strong and they force Republicans to own what they're doing, we might make some progress here. So that's something, again, join the call tonight. We're going to be driving people to do as much of that work as possible. I think that's our only shot at really addressing this and not just making it a political football. Marshall asks, what should be our plan to oppose and stop the impending deadly disastrous attack on Venezuela that Trump will use as another distraction to the fascist takeover?
This goes in the category of unbelievably horrifying things that clearly are being contemplated by Trump and for which it would be really important to have a massive rapid response reaction in the event that it escalates. And also, I just want to be real. Like, this is one of those places where he's already escalated quite a bit and in incredibly terrifying and wildly illegal ways. And our fundamental set of tools are about pressuring our elected representatives to crack down on their murder spree at sea, and to put pressure on him not to go into Venezuela in any more escalated way. It's not a satisfying answer. I think we all know that pressuring our elected representatives to push the Trump administration right now does not feel like a super swift route to results. And it is the primary vehicle right now. Like, the Congress has oversight when it comes to the war powers, and they should be attempting to exercise far more oversight than they currently are right now.
Yeah.
It's not a satisfying answer. I just want to name that right now.
It's not satisfying, and unfortunately, one of the hallmarks of an authoritarian regime is they do a lot of damage every day, and some of that you can't do anything about. And our job is the serenity prayer, serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We got to focus on where we can have impact. And so that is one of the things we try to do at What's the Plan at Indivisible is say, let's cut through all the noise as much as we can, not to say stuff isn't important, but to focus on this is where people power can make a difference right now. Jane, is this an AA meeting? Not intentionally, not yet. We'll see how bad things get. Okay, Joshua asks, Indivisible needs a presence on every popular social media platform. I am surprised that Indivisible does not have an official presence on Reddit where so much organizing takes place. We have talked about this, Joshua. We actually have internally, shout out to 5051, which has done incredible organizing on Reddit. I actually think Reddit is one of the last like human feeling social media platforms out there. So I'm a Reddit fan, although I'm more of a lurker than a poster. I like this idea. I think it's a good prompt to push us in this direction. So I take that well, and I'm going to take it back to the social media team because we haven't talked about it in a few weeks, but there has been discussion about whether we should get on there.
Wait, I think he had a bunch of other feedback on various things.
Sorry.
I don't know if we can answer all of this, but I do just want to I just want to follow the part. There's a lot about how not enough people know about Indivisible, don't know that Indivisible was affiliated with the No Kings protests. I love grassroots organizing, but we need a unified group with a specific message working towards a specific goal. Trump regime has become too emboldened for Indivisible to continue organizing symbolic gestures like No Kings. I've been seeing so much despondence, people discounting these protests or referring to events as controlled opposition. That is not a question, but I will offer a couple of different thoughts. First, one thing that I think I want to just visibilize for folks is there was an enormous and heroic Indivisible movement participation in No Kings, and our team did a big bunch of work. And also, it was a massive coalition lift. There were huge numbers of people from AF, American Federation of Teachers, SEIU, ACLU, Public Citizen, Move On, a ton more organizations. I cannot possibly name them all, but just really large number.
270.
Yeah, 270 organizations who threw in to make this possible. And so to the extent that, you know, you're not like, it's not like Indivisible is synonymous with No Kings. That's good. That is a reflection of the
Yes.
fact that the coalition is growing, and we want to actually have it be a brand that lives outside of any individual organization. We think that is a healthy thing. So I just want to address that part on the like need to do other things and on cynicism. Look, any large scale mass mobilization that achieves cultural breakthrough is going to have some people finding something to say about it. That is a normal thing that happens. It would actually, I frankly think it's like a little weird how overall positive the reception has been. There'll always be feedback, there'll always be critiques. Some of them will be valid, and we'll take them in and think about them in the next time. And also, when we're looking at the polling about how No Kings landed with the general public, it's shockingly positive. It's really over. I think the favorability ratings that I've seen are somewhere between +15 and +20 in most polling. The most recent poll from YouGov said that 8% of Americans said that they had gone to a No Kings protest. That is not actually the number. That's not that. I don't think that's statistically.
That would be 20 million people if that poll is accurate.
Right. And I think what that, there's a couple ways to read that poll. And one is that everyone's counting metrics are off. And the other is that a lot of people who didn't go to No Kings would like to think they went to No Kings and told a pollster that.
Yep.
So, which is a good thing. That is a sign that the vibe we've created a little bit of FOMO for people. These are good things. So, I am generally really satisfied with the overall reception. I think there will continue to be a sense of, cynicism, nihilism, isolation. I think that's very reasonable. People are processing some of the scariest and hardest and most frightening stuff that we've been through in our lives. And it's normal to feel like any one day didn't fix it. So, what's the point? And also, that's why we keep people engaged in an ongoing cycle of activism.
Indeed. You want to talk, actually, I think there's another point there about like symbolic action, which is something that I've heard as well. Do you want to talk about how we think about like the symbolic versus concrete demands? Because I do think like one reasonable critique of No Kings is, well, your demand is no kings.
Yeah.
That's not a demand that's actionable. Who is your target? Who is going to act on that? What's the point of that kind of thing?
Right. Well, so let me talk. I will go over the kind of strategic rationale for No Kings, and I think everybody here knows this, but forgive me, I'm just going to say it again. No individual protest is a strategy. Protests are a tactic within an overarching strategy. Our strategy is about halting, staving off, reversing authoritarian consolidation in this country.
Yes.
Large-scale national mass movements that reach everywhere, including red areas of the country, are an important part of how you demonstrate that there is mass popular backlash in a way that actually shifts the decision-making calculus of elite institutions, actors, politicians, etc. So it is not that we think Donald Trump is going to see a big protest and have this kind of emotional, revelation and suddenly become a good person. It is that we think a bunch of lawmakers are going to be like, wow, there are way more people who are way more upset about what is happening than I thought. I had better act differently. Or business people, or university presidents.
Yep.
Pick your target, right? So that's one piece. And then the other is about firming up a sense of a pro-democracy identity amongst a broad movement of people and getting those folks as much as possible into an ongoing cycle of action, right? We're going to have a question about this in the future, but we know that a lot of people are able to get new members for their groups. If you organize one of these, you've got more people showing up the next week. You've built in sometimes an absorption plan so that you're recruiting people at an event like this. We hear from lots of local groups that are, going out and making sure they're signing people up at these events. That is the process of getting somebody out the first time for a rally, but the next time for a meeting, and the next time maybe to take on some leadership in the group. That is an important process of absorbing more and more people into ongoing and escalating action.
And this is why also you see after No Kings, we don't immediately say, and this is the next mobilization, and that's the next thing we're doing. Yeah. There will be another No Kings mobilization, but actually the immediate next act, what went out this morning, we're doing mutual aid all across the country.
That's right.
We're taking action all across the country to do this concrete thing. We are taking the energy and going into a Spotify boycott, a new tactic, something that we haven't really done before much, but that we think is necessary to push back. So the point is, take everybody who is part of this and immediately plug them into something that is meaningful and real and concrete and does indeed have demands that will indeed move the ball forward. So I I want people to feel good that they've been part of the largest peaceful protest in history, and not just to feel good that they were part of history, but to feel good that they're part of a strategic plan that is built to confront this fascism. We're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. We're doing this as an overall strategic effort. And God, y'all, I hope you feel as proud of it as I do. We went from 3 million in April to 5 million in June to 7 million in October. That doesn't just happen. That doesn't just happen. There's a reason why the regime is currently acting like it never existed, because it is too painful for them to confront the reality that their policies, their efforts are so extreme that they're attracting the largest pro-democracy peaceful movement in the history of the Republic. That's big. Mary asked about discussing the undercount of no kings. I feel pretty good about over 7 million.
Yeah.
I don't think 7 million is enough, but I feel good about going from 3 million to 5 million to 7 million. And that's where most of the estimates going. If you want to feel good about yourself, go look at the Wikipedia page for largest protests in American history. What you will see is 3 of the largest protests in American history were this year. They were us. Hands off, no Kings 1, no Kings 2. It was all of us coming together to put these on, with the top one being No Kings 2. That's the largest. I mean, it's on Wikipedia. We didn't put it there. It's from the public. The largest protest in history is on the page. So I'm not saying I'm satisfied with 7 million people. I think if you have the 3.5% figure in your head from Erica Chenoweth or Maria Stephan, they would say that's 11 to 12 million. And what I'm saying is I'm pretty happy with the trend of 3 to 5 to 7. Next is 9, then 11, then 13, then we take the House and the Senate. Sounds pretty good to me. Jean asks, what can we do to put the full force of the movement on Mike Johnson's doorstep?
You know, it's an interesting question, because I think your assumption there is that Mike Johnson is the relevant decision maker, rather than Mike Johnson is actually fully owned by and a tool of Donald Trump at this point. Like, I think that a big part of the way that Mike Johnson feels heat and has a little bit of a conversation or pushback with Donald Trump is his own vulnerable members. So whenever we talk about leadership in the House or the Senate, they are, they are a representative for their district,
Yeah.
but they are accountable to their entire caucus. And they're particularly concerned, generally speaking, about their frontliners, the people who are going to be having the tough races. And so the way that Mike Johnson knows he's got a problem is when all of his frontliners are freaking out at him about how his actions are going to cost them their seats. Now, I want to be real. Part of the reason why we've shifted our own strategy over the last several months around looking at not just Congress and advocacy, but around other pillars of society, is we have an overall assessment that the Republican Party has consolidated to an extent where the kind of normal flip out backlash you'd get from frontliners just isn't quite as powerful anymore, or is a little bit more muted, because they are so freaking terrified of Donald Trump and of a primary challenge or of a reaction from his movement. But it's still an avenue worth working. It is still an angle that is worth continuing to push, particularly when we're talking about public accountability efforts on these folks that are designed to not only be leverage on them specifically, but to make the rest of their constituency, their district, understand that they are rubber stamps for the Trump agenda and for hiding the Epstein files.
Two things I would say. We took this movement, and the full force of it is on his metaphorical doorstep. He spent the 2 weeks leading up to No Kings 2 talking about how we were going to be violent Marxists in the streets. Have you heard him talk about No Kings recently? No, because it was a wild success, and he wants to act like it didn't exist. So I think we should feel pretty good that we directly confronted this regime, and Mike Johnson in particular tried to dissuade people from showing up, and what he got was the largest peaceful protest in American history. The second thing I'd say is, more directly, how do you contest for power? It's pretty simple. Stage 1, we build a Democratic Party that doesn't have its brand in the toilet during primary season next year. Stage 2, we drive the biggest blue wave in the history of the Republic in the general election. And stage 3, we protect the results when they try to steal it. That's what we do. rebuild the party in the primaries, win the election in the general, protect the results so we actually take back power. That's in front of us. That is in front of us. And then Mike Johnson is a footnote of history. He's in the minority. He no longer holds power. That's how we actually take the full force of the movement to his doorstep. Cheryl asks, why shouldn't Indivisible encourage Dems like AOC and other progressives, old and new, to register as independents like Bernie? What's the downside? I see an upside nudge as a good thing. There are people who will never return to the Dems as it exists now. Great question, Cheryl.
Yeah, I would start by what are your goals, right? Like we are currently in a two-party system. We have ideas and recommendations about how in the long term we need to move to a multi-party system that allows for a more functional more functional reforms. And also for the immediate future, we are in this first past the poll system. And so I would say, registering as an independent, registering as a Democrat, I don't have a particularly strong perspective on one of those versus the other. What I do have a really strong perspective on is that if you want the Democratic Party to be different or better, you have to elect different or better people. That is the primary season. Depending on where you are, you may need to be registered as a Democrat to vote in those primaries, right? And so I would not encourage you to give up your ability to make a decision or make a determination or have your vote heard about who is the Democrat who is going to represent you in an election where you are going to have to choose between a Democrat or a Republican. I would encourage you to think about what can I do to ensure that the best person for what I need, a real fighter, somebody who's got a different relationship with Trump and MAGA, got a different relationship with money and politics, who's really out there fighting for us, that person's the one who wins the primary.
I think there's a big opportunity in the primary to do it too, Leah. Like there has never been more of a gap between rank and file Democrats and the rest of the Democratic Party, which means I think a lot of people who would never really have gotten involved in competitive primaries before are more open to it now. And we should take advantage of this opportunity. Ultimately where we need to go, y'all, it's not rocket science. We need to reform the system. We need to have ranked choice voting. We need to have proportional representation. We need to allow people to run according to the party that they want to be part of so that folks actually have a choice. And it's not a choice between a disappointing Democrat and a fascist in the Republican side. But for the time being, where we are right now, Leah, exactly what you said. Let's fight for the party that we want, and we have the opportunity to do that in the coming 6 to 9 months.
I do just want to note that I think I misread the question because it was actually about, and there's thank you comments. There's actually a question about whether politicians should re-register as independents versus whether individual voters should register as independents. I don't know if I have I guess what I'd say is I think that's a reasonable thought. And I also think that the fundamental question ahead of us is how do you actually push the Democratic Party to be what you want it to be? And so I'm not sure that I would advocate for kind of departures as opposed to continued efforts to cohere a faction of fighters within the Democratic Party.
I do think there needs to be a solution to the fact that the Democratic Party's brand is in the toilet. Like we cannot fight the fascists when their approval ratings are 20 points higher than our Democratic Party.
Yeah.
That is like a basic problem that we face, y'all. And so it's not enough just to rally behind unpopular Democrats because we hate the fascists. We have to do the hard work to build a pro-democracy party. So I'm down with the idea of you need to run independents in some places. Where I'm from, in rural Texas, the Democrat is a bad word. Nobody's going to be elected to a seat there. And I can understand the strategy there, but at some point, you got to be able to win in these places.
Yep.
And that means you've got to have a Democratic Party that people believe in. And I don't think that's possible without us actually doing the work in the primaries and saying, you know what, we're not going to support Dems who rally behind crypto or rally behind Wall Street or rally behind AIPAC. Like there's something about the Democratic Party right now that people write off as feckless or corrupt. And that's bad. We can't have a party like that because it loses us votes. It loses us elections. And I don't want to lose elections. I don't want ideological purity, but I don't want to lose our party. So it's on us to build that winner party. And the place to build that party is the primary season. So this might be uncomfortable for some folks because we're used to being like, we got to rally behind the Dem because that's who we've got. But I would highly, highly encourage folks here to take a serious look at this primary season. Identify the Dems who are disappointing you, see if they have good challengers, and get behind them. You're going to see Indivisible going in this direction. We're not going to move from top down. That's not how it's going to look like. But we're going to be working with Indivisible groups to try to rebuild this party into actual fighting machine that can win. That is our goal.
And I think that's a good and inspiring note to close on for today.
Okay.
We're
well,
actually going to get you out of here on time, y'all. Congratulations to us. We never do that. We
that
just
is-
keep going.
That is right. Well, and our kids, our 3-year-old and 5-year-old, are going to get home anytime now. We're going to carve some pumpkins. Everybody have a great Halloween. There's some scary stuff happening out there, but it is just a joy and a pleasure, and with a deep sense of pride that we get to be organizing with y'all in this moment. So we will see you again for next week's What's the Plan at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on Thursday. That was the plan, y'all. I'm Ezra.
I'm Leah.
And we'll see you next week.